A city that seems to stand between heaven and earth, between faith and despair. It is often called the city of peace, but perhaps that is history's greatest paradox. For where prayers and psalms should have echoed, for thousands of years there has instead been the clash of swords, the crash of siege towers, and the cries of those dying within its walls. Picture those walls, wrapped in the shadows of sunset. They have risen and fallen, destroyed and rebuilt again, as though the very stones remember both triumph and defeat. Upon them are scars of fire that consumed the sanctuary, and scratches left by enemy blades that cut through the gates. These walls are not merely architecture. They are witnesses. Witnesses of betrayal and loyalty, of glory and of judgment. What makes Jerusalem so unique? Why did it become the heart of biblical events, a symbol of the struggle between light and darkness? The answer lies in its calling. In the book of Kings it is written that God chose this place to set his name upon it. But that divine choice became the reason for endless wars. Whoever ruled Jerusalem did not only hold a city. They held a symbol. And a symbol is always more than land. A symbol is power over hearts and minds. Here the roads of empires always met. Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Rome, each one longed to stamp its seal on the stone of Jerusalem. Each saw it as the key to dominion. Yet behind the political mask was always a deeper drama. Jerusalem was not only a city, it was the image of a nation's soul. And just as a soul can be pure or defiled, so the city could be blessed or condemned. In the scriptures we read the same warning repeated: when the people turn away from God, when the temple fills not with true prayer but with hypocrisy, then a shadow falls over the city. Prophets cry out, urging and warning, turn back. For the day will come when the walls will not stand, and the temple will be destroyed. Yet most refuse to listen. For it is always harder to admit guilt than to close one's ears. And in that moment the city stands on the edge between life and catastrophe. See how this pattern repeats through history. Jerusalem was at the center of the war with Babylon when King Zedekiah sought alliance with Egypt instead of repentance and a return to the covenant. Historians call it a political mistake. The prophets call it spiritual blindness. Either way, the outcome was the same: the walls torn down, the temple burned, the people led into exile. The Black Day came not because God had forgotten, but because the people would not listen. And is it not the same today? Our modern world speaks of alliances, of armies, of economic blocs, but avoids the question of spiritual foundation. We argue over who is stronger, which nation has the right to dictate terms, but are we not repeating Jerusalem's path? For then, as now, people try to build security on power rather than on faithfulness. Jerusalem is a mirror reflecting the heart of humanity. When the heart is pure, the city stands. When it is infected with pride, the city falls. That is the mystery of its history. For the destruction of Jerusalem has never been just a political defeat. It has always been a spiritual warning. Look at today's headlines. Do we not see the same sacred places turned into battlefields? Politicians wielding religious symbols as tools, while people forget their true meaning. As Babylonians or Romans once came with the sword, so now the mighty of this world try to control symbols that were never theirs. And here lies the ultimate question: are we all now standing on that same edge? Is another Black Day approaching, not only for Jerusalem, but for the entire world? For if this city symbol has always been a reflection of the spiritual state of a people, then today's Jerusalem reflects the state of all humanity. And that reflection is troubling. A city on the edge. So it was then. So it is now. And the question is not, Whether the black day will come again, but when and how. Imagine a city not yet destroyed, but already doomed. It still breathes with life, yet a fracture runs through its heart. People attend festivals, bring offerings, sing psalms, but their hearts are far from the God they claim to serve. And in the midst of this false comfort rises one lone figure, the prophet. He has no army, no throne, not even public support. But he carries something stronger than any weapon, a word. Jeremiah, known as the weeping prophet, his heart was torn between love for his people and the knowledge of coming disaster. He walked through the streets of Jerusalem crying out, "This is what the Lord says, if you do not turn back, I will destroy this temple as I destroyed Shiloh." People listened, but they laughed. How could it be? The temple was God's dwelling, the center of the world, their guarantee of safety. And here lies the tragedy. The greatest danger for a nation is the certainty that catastrophe is impossible. A confidence that blinds the eyes. Jeremiah warned that the enemy was already at the gates, that Babylon would show no mercy. But King Zedekiah listened to politicians and generals, sought alliances with Egypt, tried to solve the crisis with human wisdom. And God's voice was pushed aside. Look at this conflict, prophet versus king. Word against sword. Spiritual reality against political plans. Jeremiah appeared insane in the eyes of his own people. They threw him into a pit, accused him of treason, beat him. Yet he could not stay silent, for the word inside him burned like fire in his bones. This is the true power of prophecy. It does not seek popularity, it does not bend to its audience. It cuts, it exposes, it speaks against the crowd. The voice of the prophet became a symbol in itself. Jeremiah wrote his warnings on a scroll. When King Jehoiakim read them, he cut the scroll into pieces and burned it in the fire, as if to erase reality itself, as if truth could be silenced. But the word cannot be destroyed. It lives on, even if the paper turns to ashes. And this became one of the darkest symbols of that day. People tried to silence the warning instead of listening to it. Is it not the same today? How often are voices of warning ignored or mocked? How often do experts or spiritual leaders cry out, "Be careful, we are heading toward disaster," only for the crowd to turn away, because truth is too uncomfortable? We love pleasing words. We love to hear those who promise peace and prosperity. But when someone speaks of judgment, of repentance, of the need for change, we quickly close our ears. The prophet's voice always speaks at the edge. It comes when there is still time to avoid disaster, but the hourglass is running out. And the pressing question is whether that voice will be heard. In Jerusalem, it was not. History moved forward. The gates were broken, the walls collapsed, the temple burned. Words once dismissed as madness became brutal reality. The parallel to our time is clear. We live in a world that also hears voices of warning. Some speak of ecological collapse, others of military threats, others of a moral and spiritual crisis. Yet most insist, that does not concern us. That could never happen to us. This is exactly what the people of Jerusalem thought. And so the Black Day begins. Not with swords or flames, but with deafness to the prophetic voice. Jeremiah wept not only for the destruction to come. He wept because he saw his people choosing their path. And here we find another truth of prophecy: God never destroys without warning. There is always a voice, always a chance. But when that chance is rejected, people lead themselves to ruin. Picture Jeremiah standing on a street corner, at the busy marketplace where people buy bread, vegetables, and wine. He shouts, Do not trust in deceptive words, saying, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. People shake their heads, laugh, and say, here he goes again. This fanatic with his prophecies. Yet within a few years everything he spoke came true. Those who mocked him were dragged into exile, watching their children bound in chains. The voice of the prophet is always a mirror to society. If we are willing to listen, we may avoid catastrophe. If not, history repeats itself. And the final question before us today, do we hear this voice? Or are we already cutting up the scroll and throwing it into the fire, thinking that in this way we can escape the truth? The day foretold by the prophets, the day feared by many yet believed by few. The Black Day of Jerusalem. It is not just a date in the Chronicles. It is a moment when time stood still and reality turned into nightmare. Picture the city surrounded by the enemy. The Babylonian army at its gates. Siege towers rolling forward, arrows raining down, each sunrise bringing new terror. Inside the walls, famine tightened its grip. Bread was dearer than gold. Water rarer than silver. People wandered the streets searching for crumbs. Mothers held children, crying from thirst. This was no legend, no metaphor. The Book of Lamentations says, the children beg for bread, but no one gives it to them. And then the gates were broken. Babylon's soldiers poured inside. Flames spread through the streets, columns of smoke covered the sky. The temple, once thought unshakable, was consumed by fire. Sacred vessels melted, incense smoke mingled with the smoke of ruin. All that was holy desecrated. All that was eternal reduced to ash. Here we face the deepest paradox. The people believed the temple was their guarantee of safety. They thought, as long as we have the temple, nothing can happen. Yet the temple became the very center of disaster. The sanctuary in which they trusted burned to the ground. This revealed a painful truth: nothing outward can save when the inner heart is corrupted by pride and unbelief. That day was not only a military defeat. It was a spiritual collapse. Prophets had said, do not trust in the temple if you live in sin. But the people wanted to hear otherwise. And so the result came. The Black Day was the sign that promises without faithfulness are empty. The symbol of that day was fire. Fire that destroyed more than buildings. It devoured hopes, it consumed illusions, it purified through pain. Fire is always a double symbol, ending and beginning, death and cleansing. Perhaps this is why prophets not only wept, but also declared that even in ashes a new hope might be born. But in that moment, the people saw only darkness. How can one describe such pain? The Book of Lamentations says, with their own hands compassionate women have cooked their children, who became their food. A horrifying detail, yet it shows the depth of despair. When siege stripped the land of food, when hunger broke the last barriers, humanity fell to its darkest state. This was not only war. It was the loss of humanity itself. And we must understand, the Black Day was no accident. Not just a stronger enemy, not just a failed alliance. It was inevitable. When a people's heart turns away from God, the Black Day comes. It was a warning then. It is a warning. Still, do we not see the same today? As modern wars destroy cities, we witness the same images. Homes ablaze, children starving, sanctuaries ruined. The very scenes described in Scripture play out before our eyes. And we ask, has history taught us nothing? Jerusalem became an example. An example of how quickly everything can be lost when the warning voice is ignored. An example that even the holiest can be destroyed when it becomes an empty symbol. And yet, also a sign that after the Black Day comes renewal. For amid the ruins, the people endured. In exile, faith survived. Out of the darkness, hope was reborn. But for those who saw the flames, for those who heard the cries in Jerusalem's streets, that day was the most terrible memory of all. It marked the turning of history. And ever since, each generation that remembers Jerusalem knows, the Black Day is a reality that can return. Today, as we watch the world, as we see destruction and chaos, we must remember Jerusalem. For its Black Day is not just the past. It is a mirror in which we see ourselves. And the question remains, will we heed the warning this time, or will we again walk the path that leads into the fire? The Black Day of Jerusalem was not only history. It was a prophecy, fulfilled from beginning to end. And perhaps, it has not yet spoken its final word. The Black Day of Jerusalem, when Babylon's armies burned the temple and scattered the people, seemed like the end of history. But history did not end. It continued, like an echo bouncing off the mountains, returning again and again, each time in a different voice, but with the same meaning. Jerusalem became the city of echoes. Each generation, each era, relived its fall. 5 centuries after Babylon's catastrophe came another tragedy. It was the year 70 after the birth of Christ. Rome, the mightiest empire of its time, decided to crush the rebellious nation. The general Titus surrounded the city, and once again Jerusalem faced siege. The events mirrored the earlier destruction, famine, despair, civil strife. The Jewish historian Josephus wrote that hunger was so severe people ate the leather of their belts, and the streets were filled with corpses. The symbol of this second Black Day was the stone. For Jesus Christ, weeping over Jerusalem, had said, "Not one stone here will be left upon another." And when the Roman legions stormed the city, the prophecy came true word for word. The temple was burned, every stone torn apart, as soldiers pried them up to scrape out melted gold. Jerusalem again became a heap of ashes. And here we see the pattern. From Babylonians to Romans, the same drama repeated: siege, collapse, ruins. Centuries passed, empires changed, but the city remained a symbol of human stubbornness and divine faithfulness. For each destruction was not only a catastrophe but also the fulfillment of a word spoken long before. These events cannot be viewed as mere history. They were lessons. But did the people learn? Is it not the same today? When nations again imagine their cities unshakable, their states eternal, their empires indestructible, the history of Jerusalem tells us, no wall stands forever. No empire is guaranteed. All can fall in a single day. Rome thought that by erasing Jerusalem from the map, they could erase its meaning. They renamed the city Aelia Capitolina, banned Jews from entering, and raised statues to their gods. But the opposite happened. The more they tried to erase the memory of the holy city, the stronger that memory grew. For Jerusalem is not just a place on the map. It is a code, inscribed in human consciousness. The echo of that Black Day was felt in every land where the exiles wandered. By the rivers of Babylon they wept, in foreign lands they sang psalms of Zion. They passed to their children the promise, next year in Jerusalem. Even in ruins, the city lived on. In their hearts. This is another lesson: stones can be broken, but a symbol cannot. Here lies a parallel for our own time. How many cities have been destroyed in the wars of recent decades? How many nations driven from their lands? Yet symbols endure. The displaced keep their language, their songs, their prayers. Ruins become monuments, reminding the world that no power can erase memory. And so too, Jerusalem continues to stand at the center, even when again and again powers try to claim it. the echo of that black day still shapes geopolitics. Jerusalem remains a stumbling stone for nations. No empire ever holds it completely. It remains a flashpoint, a center of disputes. Proof that its story is not over. It continues, with every new era writing its own chapter. Here we see a conflict that stretches across centuries, empire versus the holy city. An archetype, repeated again and again. Babylon, Rome, modern states, all play the same role. And each time, Jerusalem becomes a test. Can a symbol be destroyed? Can memory be erased? Can what God has chosen be conquered? The answer is always the same: walls can fall, but the essence endures. The symbol of scattered stones speaks still. Stones thrown down became witnesses. They say, silently, it happened. And also, it will happen again if you will not listen. For Jerusalem's story is not only the story of one nation, it is a code for all. And today, as we listen to echoes across the centuries, we must ask ourselves, do we understand that history is not a museum, but a mirror? Do we hear in the ruins a voice of warning? For if not, the black day will echo again, in our own generation. Some stories happen only once. Others repeat again and again, as if written into the very fabric of existence. Jerusalem belongs to the second kind. Its destruction was not only a tragedy of the past. It became a script rewritten across the pages of human history in different forms. The prophets warned, if you turn away from God, the city will be destroyed. It happened with Babylon. Then again with Rome. And each time, people said, never again. Yet it happened again. The pattern of repetition was woven into Jerusalem's story, like a spiral returning to the same points, but at another level. The symbol of this spiral is time. For in the Bible, time is not merely a line. It is a circle that turns, bringing generations back to the same trials. Nations think they are unique, that their problems are new. But in truth, they are reliving what has already been. And Jerusalem is the clearest proof. Look at the details. In Jeremiah's day, people said, we have the temple, we are safe. In the time of Jesus, the Pharisees and scribes said the same, we have the temple, who could destroy it? And in both cases, the temple burned. What was thought unshakable vanished in fire. History repeated itself. Why? Because people confuse form with substance. They see walls and imagine security. But they forget the heart. Once the heart grew cold, once faith became an empty ritual, the temple lost its power. That law held then, holds now, and will hold tomorrow. This is the code of repetition. We see it on a larger scale as well. Every empire has thought itself eternal. Babylon eternal. Rome eternal. Medieval kingdoms eternal. Modern states think the same. But all follow the cycle: rise, pride, decline. Jerusalem mirrors this cycle. Its story is the story of humanity in miniature. The spiral of time is the symbol of repetition. Imagine it, turning, passing through the same points, yet always higher or lower. Events repeat. Never in identical form, but always with the same essence. The Black Day of Jerusalem is an archetype. And archetypes always return. Here we face the question, is this coincidence, or design? The Bible says it is design. That God allows events to repeat so that we may learn. But humanity does not learn. Each generation thinks itself wiser, stronger, more unique. And each time, the Black Day comes to prove, no, you are part of the same spiral. Look at our own time. We live in an age where technology convinces us we control the future. But is this not the same pride of ancient empires? We say, we have science, armies, economies, we are secure. And Jerusalem's history whispers, walls always fall. As modern wars burn cities, as nations collapse in inner crises, the code of repetition activates once more. This code applies not only to nations. It works in every human life. Each of us faces our own Jerusalem. We think, I am strong, unshakable, and ignore the warning voice. But when the heart strays from truth, we too face our own black day. This is the universal symbol. Jerusalem is not only a city. It is the reflection of every soul. Remember how Jesus said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets, how often I long to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. These are not only words for a city. They are words for every heart that rejects truth. Here the code of repetition becomes personal. The echoes of Jerusalem's black days are not a curse, but a sign. A sign saying, look closely. This is no accident. This is a pattern. This is a warning. If we see the pattern, we may break free of it. If not, we will walk the same path again and again, from glory to ruin. Today the world once more approaches a critical edge. Crises multiply. Wars spread, values erode. And a strange déjà vu arises. For we have seen this before in Jerusalem's story. We already know how this spiral ends. The question remains, are we ready to stop it this time? The code of repetition is Jerusalem's greatest mystery. And perhaps humanity's greatest chance. For if we learn to hear the echoes of the past, we may yet change the future. But if we remain deaf, history will return in its relentless circle once again. Jerusalem is not only a city of history. It is a city of the present. If in ancient times it was a symbol of faith and a place where the human and the divine met, today it is also a stage for geopolitics. Here the interests of states, religions, and ideologies collide, and that is what makes Jerusalem one of the most explosive places on earth. What is Jerusalem today? A city of three religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Each sees it as holy, each claims it as a symbol. For Jews, it is the place of the temple. For Christians, the place of Golgotha and the resurrection. For Muslims, the place of the Prophet Muhammad's ascension. Again we face the same drama, one stone, three different visions, three different stories, three different rites. This is not only a religious conflict. It is a conflict of symbols that spills over into politics. The symbol of the modern Jerusalem is a stumbling stone. It is a sanctuary, and at the same time it becomes a cause of hostility. What should unite becomes a source of division. That contradiction makes it a center of global tension. Look at the map. Jerusalem is a small city, yet its importance is wildly disproportionate to its size. It is the heart for which great powers compete. Whoever controls Jerusalem holds a key to influence over entire peoples. And here, the ancient script repeats, empires once more struggle for the holy city. In the 20th century Jerusalem became a theater of wars and diplomatic battles. After the Second World War, and after the creation of the State of Israel, it stood at the center of the conflict between Jews and Arabs. In the Six-Day War, the Israeli army captured East Jerusalem, a turning point. Since then, the city's status has been the stumbling block in every peace negotiation. But if we look deeper, we see more than a political dispute. It is a contest over a symbol. Behind every decision about Jerusalem stands religious feeling, historical memory, and a sense of sacred right. That is why compromise feels almost impossible. How can a sanctuary be divided? How do you divide a symbol? Today the streets of Jerusalem are full of life, tourists, pilgrims, local residents. Yet beneath the surface a fire constantly smolders. From time to time it bursts out in clashes, terrorist attacks, and political crises. The world watches with dread, knowing that any explosion in Jerusalem can ignite the entire region. Here the prophetic parallel sounds unmistakably. In the book of Zechariah we read, "I will make Jerusalem a cup." That makes all the surrounding peoples stagger. Is this not a picture of our times? Jerusalem has truly become that cup which intoxicates world leaders, driving them to steps that heighten tension. Once again, the city shows that its story is not over. It is a living prophecy unfolding before our eyes. Geopolitical Jerusalem is a city of paradoxes. For some it is the heart of hope, for others, a symbol of occupation. For some, proof of God's faithfulness, for others, proof of human injustice. That double meaning makes it the core of a global conflict. Watch how the world reacts. When a country moves its embassy to Jerusalem, it is not a routine diplomatic act, it is a geopolitical earthquake. When clashes erupt on the Temple Mount, the headlines circle the globe within minutes. All this tells us the same truth: Jerusalem is more than a city. It is the planet's nerve. Why this city? Why not another? The answer again lies in the symbol. Jerusalem is the place where heaven and earth cross. And as long as people try to possess this place, they will collide with the fact that it defies human control. Here we face the conflict of our age, the holy city versus geopolitical interests, religion versus politics, symbol versus power. And every time, ordinary people pay the price. Those who live in the city, pray on its streets, and raise children within its walls. For them Jerusalem is home, for politicians it is an arena. The symbol of the stumbling stone speaks loudly here. Jerusalem trips up the mighty and the meek alike. It refuses to let the world rest. It forces us to choose sides. That is what makes it both dangerous and necessary. Geopolitical Jerusalem is the city of a coming conflict. Will it become a place of reconciliation, or the arena of a final battle? The question remains open. One thing is clear: Jerusalem will stay at the center of history to the very end. For its role is to be not only a city, but a prophecy. The history of Jerusalem is not only about the past. It is also about the future. Every fall of the city, every black day, was both an ending and a beginning. Prophets spoke not only of destruction, but also of renewal. That is why Jerusalem remains a symbol of unfinished prophecy. Look at the scriptures. The prophet Zechariah said that one day the Lord himself would stand on the Mount of Olives, and living waters would flow from Jerusalem. The Apostle John in the book of Revelation described a new Jerusalem descending from heaven, prepared like a bride. These are not just poetic images. They are visions of the destiny of humanity. Jerusalem today is divided, conflicted, scarred by history. But its very existence, against all odds, is already a miracle. Empires have come and gone, yet the city remains. This endurance itself is a sign: the story is not over. Unfinished prophecy means that history is moving toward a goal. Each black day was a warning, but also a step. Each destruction carried within it the seed of hope. For in the ashes faith did not die, in exile the people were not erased. Jerusalem teaches us that even the deepest night can end in dawn. And so we stand today, as if at a threshold. On one side lies the memory of ruins, of fire, of exile. On the other side lies the promise of a new Jerusalem, a city not built by human hands, a city where God dwells with his people. The contrast is stark, from destruction to restoration, from judgment to redemption. This is why Jerusalem is called the mirror of humanity. In it we see both our failures and our hope. Its ruins show what pride and unbelief lead to. Its survival shows what faith and promise mean. It is both warning and consolation, both tragedy and victory. The unfinished prophecy asks each generation, what role will you play? Will you repeat the mistakes of the past, ignoring the voice of warning, trusting in walls and armies? Or will you learn, turn back, and prepare for the city to come? For the New Jerusalem is not only a vision of heaven. It is a call to live differently now. The prophets spoke of nations streaming to Jerusalem to learn the ways of peace. They spoke of swords beaten into plowshares. The book of Revelation says there will be no more tears, no more death, no more night. These are the final words of the unfinished prophecy. They tell us that the story of Jerusalem, with all its pain, moves toward joy. And so the question remains, do we see this? Do we believe it? The history of Jerusalem proves that prophecy is not an empty word. Every warning was fulfilled. Every black day came to pass. That gives us reason to trust that the promise of renewal will also be fulfilled. The unfinished prophecy is not only about Jerusalem. It is about all humanity. About you and me. For each of us has our own city that must fall and be rebuilt. Each of us faces our own ruins and our own hope. And in that, Jerusalem is our mirror. The story is not finished. The final word has not yet been spoken. Jerusalem still waits. And perhaps the greatest question of our age is this: are we waiting with it? For one day, the prophecy will be complete. One day, the new Jerusalem will appear. And then history itself will find its end, and its beginning.